Is my child ready for kindergarten? What actually matters, and it isn't reading. A parenting guide from Creative Minds Montessori. Real kindergarten readiness isn't reading and counting. Kindergarten teachers themselves rank language skills, social skills, and self-regulation as the important predictors, being able to separate from you, listen, ask for help, manage a code in the bathroom, and try again when something's hard. The academics come fast once those are in place. You're not imagining the pressure, because academic expectations really did get pushed down from first grade. But drilling backfires. In one major study, the academic gains from academic pre-K had faded by third grade. Skip the flashcard panic, protect play, and ask your child's teachers what they actually see. A mother heard that a neighbor's child was already reading simple words. She looked over at her son, who was at that moment eating a crayon, and felt a bolt of panic that he was already behind, for a school that hadn't started yet. A father watched his high-energy daughter at a library event, unable to sit still for more than 3 minutes, and found himself imagining an entire academic career conducted in the principal's office. Another parent got a readiness checklist from a local school, realized their child couldn't tie shoes or name every shape, and spent the following month turning every car ride into a quiet interrogation about colors and numbers. Notice that not one of these worries came from the child. Every single one arrived from outside. A parent who did hold her summer-born son back described living in two minds, some days sure it was right, some days genuinely regretting it. The doubt never closed. It just migrated, and now attaches to a future transition instead. And one parent of a summer-born child was told at a parents' evening that although her child was socially and behaviorally on track, he'd struggle academically next year. She left rattled, having watched a perfectly normal for age 5-year-old described as behind. Start with the thing that will make you feel less irrational. The goalposts genuinely moved. Academic expectations that used to belong to first grade have been pushed down into kindergarten, and from there into preschool. The bar for a 5-year-old today is objectively higher than when you were 5. And the scale is startling. In all-day kindergartens, children now spend roughly 4 to 6 times as much time on literacy and math instruction and test prep, 2 to 3 hours a day, as on free play or choice time, which is often 30 minutes or less. Between 1998 and 2010, play and dedicated play spaces measurably decreased. Kindergarten changed. Your instincts about what 5-year-olds are like did not. But here's the mismatch that matters most. Readiness got redefined as academics, and the research says otherwise. Ask kindergarten teachers what they consider very important and they name language skills, social skills, and self-regulation, not letter and number recitation. The parent panic is aimed at the wrong target entirely. The child who can separate at the door, ask for help, wait a turn and recover from frustration will learn letters in about 10 minutes. The child who knows all the letters but falls apart when the marker runs out has the harder year. Underneath the developmental question sits a social one. The anxiety is fundamentally competitive. Will my child keep up, be behind, not be as successful as the next child? As one expert put it, parents become nervous early that their children won't be as successful as the next person if they can't read or do addition by kindergarten. That's a status worry wearing a developmental costume, and it's worth naming, because status worries don't respond to reassurance about milestones. And anxiety travels downward. Children's anxiety often mirrors the adults around them. Your child needs you to be the calm in the storm, not a second storm. A parent's readiness panic can become the very thing that makes a child anxious about school, which means the worry is capable of manufacturing its own evidence. One last piece, rarely said out loud. Redshirting is class-inflected. Only about 4 to 5.5% of families delay entry, and it's concentrated among higher income, higher education households in affluent areas, partly because a delay means another year of paid childcare, which in one-sided case ran around $20,000 for private pre-K. So the readiness arms race is also an equity story. Resourced families can buy an extra year of maturity, and most families can't. Kindergarten was invented in 1840 by Friedrich Froebel, and the name is the argument, a child's garden, a place of play with objects that spark curiosity. The academic drill version of kindergarten is the historical aberration, not the original design. We didn't invent play-based early education as a soft modern alternative. We invented kindergarten as play and then gradually replaced it. The worry itself also predates the internet by decades. David L. Kynes, the hurried child, named the phenomenon of pushing children to grow up too fast in 1981. Every generation of parents has faced some version of "Am I preparing my child fast enough?" What's different now has a datable cause rather than a vibe, policy. The academic pushdown intensified with the No Child Left Behind era and the accountability and testing regime that followed. Reading by end of kindergarten expectations, more assessment and less recess, music and play, with the squeeze landing hardest in underfunded schools. The pressure you feel was, quite literally, legislated. Then the phone amplifies it in two ways. First, comparison on tap. Parenting feeds make every milestone visible and rankable in real time. Second, and more consequential, screens can crowd out the very things that build readiness. Handheld screen time is associated with higher risk of expressive language delay, with one study finding each additional 30 minutes a day linked to more parent-reported expressive language delay in 18-month-olds. Children with more than 2 hours a day of screen exposure were about twice as likely to show developmental delay. Even background television counts. A TV on in the room has been linked with lower language and social-emotional skills. Language, self-regulation and play are precisely the real readiness skills, and precisely what solitary screen time displaces. Where technology genuinely helps, and this is the crucial distinction, co-viewed, high-quality educational content watched with a caregiver has been associated with increased language skills. Video calls with grandparents, a show you watch together and then talk about, a read-aloud app you do side by side. All fine. The medium isn't the enemy. Solitary passive consumption is the risk. 3 common fixes, honestly. The first, drill it. Flashcards, worksheets, sight words, academic pre-K. It feels productive and measurable, produces visible short-term gains, and soothes the parent's anxiety today. But the gains are shallow and they fade. A Vanderbilt study found the academic advantages of academic pre-K had vanished by 3rd grade, and multiple studies find children pushed academically before they're developmentally ready can do worse by 3rd and 4th grade. Children who spend preschool doing drills often burn out by 1st grade and come to associate learning with boredom rather than curiosity. There's a physical dimension too. Young 5-year-olds genuinely struggle to fit letters inside worksheet boxes, so constant correction teaches them that books and learning are stressful places where they fail. As one analysis put it, a narrow reading and numeracy emphasis is detrimental even to the children who succeed at it. The second, redshirt, hold them back a year. The upside is real and worth taking seriously. Extra time to mature emotionally, socially, and physically, plus a measurable short-term academic edge, since redshirted children average higher on early kindergarten assessments. For a child who genuinely isn't ready, it can mean arriving with confidence rather than struggle. But that edge often begins fading by the end of 1st grade and is small and mixed long-term. The costs are real: separation from same-age peers, boredom if the work is too easy, the risk that the child reads the decision as "I wasn't good enough," an extra year of childcare cost. And the most important catch, if a child has a genuine developmental concern, delaying can delay the intervention they need. Services before age 5 are more effective than after, and age does not remediate a developmental disorder. The third, outsource the worry, with tutoring, kindergarten prep programs or readiness testing. A second opinion can be genuinely reassuring, and a good preschool teacher's observation is legitimately valuable. The experts explicitly recommend asking your child's teacher. But readiness tests used as gatekeeping are exactly what the Academy of Pediatrics warns against. Assessment should guide instruction, not sort children into ready and not ready. Most children are ready for kindergarten without any special preparation, and formal prep adds cost, pressure, and a "my child is a project" framing that raises everyone's anxiety, child included. And as that parent's evening story shows, an institution can manufacture panic where none was warranted. Here's the through line of all three methods. Readiness is knowing how to learn, curiosity, independence, handling frustration, connecting with people. Protect that, and the academics arrive on their own. The first method, build independence and practical life skills instead of academics. The strongest predictors of kindergarten success are social-emotional skills and self-regulation, which in practice means a child who can manage themselves for short stretches without an adult solving everything. Montessori calls this practical life: dressing, pouring, tidying, managing your own belongings. And it isn't a charming side activity. Sequencing your own coat, zip and backpack is executive function practice. Hold a goal, run the steps, tolerate the frustration in the middle. So let your child manage their own coat, shoes, and bag, even though it's slower. Let them pour their own water and clean up the spill. And practice following 2- and 3-step directions: get your cup, fill it, bring it to the table, because that's precisely what a kindergarten morning is made of. And practice separating, short drop-offs at a friend's house, a class, a grandparent, so that goodbye is a familiar experience rather than a first-day experiment. Fold all of this into ordinary life rather than announcing a program. Narrate it as you're big enough to do this yourself now, celebrate the effort, and never grade it. Expect everything to take 3 times as long for a few weeks. That's the cost of the child doing it rather than watching you do it. The saboteur is the morning rush. If you re-zip the coat every day because you're late, the child learns that independence is something you say you want and then take back. Build 15 extra minutes into the mornings, or pick the days you can afford it. The second method reverses the usual assumption: children build real cognitive skills through play, and the academic content is already inside it. Stacking blocks is estimating height, counting, comparing sizes, negotiating with a peer, and developing the fine motor control that writing will later require. The Academy of Pediatrics endorses play as the primary vehicle for early learning, and the outcome data supports it. Play-based children matched or beat academic program peers in reading and math by 3rd grade, with better social skills and fewer behavior problems. You aren't choosing between play and preparation. Play is the preparation. In practice, embed rather than drill. Count real things: stairs, grapes, forks at the table. Write your child's name on their drawings so they see their own word repeatedly in a context that matters to them. Point out that print carries meaning: the sign, the menu, the cereal box. Read aloud daily and let them love it without turning it into a comprehension quiz. Put letters and numbers into real use: a shopping list they help write, a score they help keep. There's nothing to introduce here, because it replaces worksheets with what your child already wants to do. But expect it to feel insufficient, and that's the honest warning: play doesn't look like preparation, which is exactly why anxious parents abandon it for worksheets that look like progress and aren't. The saboteur is the hijack, turning a happy block session into a pop quiz about shapes. One quiz costs you the play. The third method is the most underrated. Rich conversation using new vocabulary may matter more for language development than early reading instruction, and naming feelings builds the self-regulation that most strongly predicts how a school year goes. It's the wider vocabulary, calmer child path, and it requires no materials at all. So talk with your child through the day rather than at them, reel back and forth, with genuine questions and time to answer, using words slightly above their level rather than simplified ones. And give feelings names as they happen. You're frustrated because the tower fell. Because a child who can say "I'm frustrated" at 5 is a child who doesn't need to hit at 6. Practice waiting and simple impulse control inside games, where losing is safe. Protect extended choice play rather than a schedule of short fragmented activities, since sustained attention is built by long uninterrupted stretches and eroded by constant switching. And prioritize face-to-face interaction over educational apps. The Academy of Pediatrics is clear that real interaction and home reinforcement beat app-based instruction. Introducing this is easy, because it isn't a program. It's more talking and more playing, with fewer screens. Frame any screen reduction as a swap rather than a ban. And the saboteur is the interrogation. Turning conversation into a colors and numbers quiz in the car turns the one genuinely enjoyable readiness activity into a test, and your child will stop volunteering answers. A 4 or 5-year-old's developmental job is to explore, move, play and feel safe, not to sit still and perform. When a child is drilled before they're ready, what they experience is not learning but frustration and correction. And some of the failure is purely physical. Small hands are not yet built to squeeze letters into a worksheet box, so the failure is developmental, not a matter of effort. The child cannot tell the difference. They just know they're getting it wrong. Here's what readiness actually sounds like translated into a child's own terms. I can say goodbye to my grown-up and trust the teacher. I can ask for what I need. I can wait, listen to a story, and try again when something's hard. I can manage my coat and get to the bathroom. That's a felt sense of safety and capability. It is not a checklist, and no amount of flashcards produces it. They also absorb your fear. Anxiety in young children commonly mirrors the adults around them, which means a child can arrive at kindergarten already braced for failure, having concluded from your face that something about them is not going to be enough. What looks like a readiness problem is sometimes a caught anxiety problem. And the stakes of getting this wrong early are higher than they look. A child made to feel like a failure at 5 for not yet reading can carry that shadow through their school career, because reading has become a place where they fail rather than a thing they do. Even the redshirting decision reads differently from inside. It can feel like relief or like a verdict. I wasn't ready, I'm different, my friends moved on. Children read the meaning the adults attached to the decision far more accurately than the decision itself. For this topic in particular, your child's current teachers are the most underused expertise available to you, and the experts agree they should be the first people you ask. You have a sample size of one child. A good preschool teacher has watched hundreds of children this age, in a group, over time. That's not a nicer opinion than yours, it's a different instrument. A good program helps in 3 ways: observation instead of testing, assessing through notes, work samples, and what a child gravitates toward, rather than sorting by a one-shot score, consistency, since the same expectations for independence in both places compound, and diffusing rather than feeding the arms race, because telling you plainly that a normal for-age child is on track is a real service. So ask the question directly, in your experience with children this age, how is mine doing socially, with self-regulation, with attention? A weak program makes it worse in mirror image ways: drill-heavy worksheets that burn a 4-year-old out, thin communication reporting only academics, staff turnover that breaks continuity, and a center that predicts your summer-born child will struggle without nuance. So expect concrete day-to-day observations: how drop-off goes, whether your child asks for help, how they play with peers, how long they sustain attention, how they handle feelings, with work samples rather than a reading level. And loop the child in. Talk about kindergarten with them in an age-appropriate way. Read books about starting school, visit the building if you can, let them ask their own questions. A transition you plan together is a very different experience from a verdict handed down. This is not medical advice. It's a starting point for a conversation with your pediatrician. Most readiness worry is ordinary and resolves. Consider raising it if your child persistently struggles significantly with separation well beyond a normal settling-in period, can't manage basic self-care that peers manage, shows persistent difficulty with attention or impulse control, has notable fine motor difficulty with a pencil or scissors, or shows speech or expressive language delay. On attention, one caveat: younger-in-year children are more likely to be mislabeled with ADHD simply for being developmentally younger, which is a reason to evaluate carefully rather than assume. And 3 reframes that cut against the common instinct. Delaying school does not fix a developmental concern, age won't remediate a developmental disorder, and a child with anxiety won't outgrow it by starting later. Early intervention beats waiting, because services before age 5 are more effective. And a diagnosis is not itself a reason to delay. With the right supports, the sooner a child gets help, the better. The research here is genuinely mixed at the edges, and that is the honest message rather than a failure of the research. There is no universal right answer. There's only your child. Development is individual in exactly the way you already accept elsewhere. Children reach psychological and social readiness at different ages, just as they walk and talk at different ages. The Academy of Pediatrics frames it precisely that way and warns explicitly against using readiness as a gate. Trust the range. You did with walking. And parents who've made the decision keep landing in the same place. It's completely child-dependent, and even the ones happy with their choice still second-guess it. Certainty was never on offer, and that's not a sign you decided badly. So take the professional input and then trust your own observation. Your calm matters more than any worksheet. And keep the one durable takeaway: readiness is knowing how to learn, not a list of letters and numbers. The child eating a crayon today has, in all likelihood, an entirely ordinary and successful school career ahead of him. For the full guide and more parenting resources, visit creativemindsmontessori.com/parenting.